components of the nervous system, and of the motor component. That's like everything, people. Also, research in tensegrity, tension with necessity, how the mechanical forces are distributed, demonstrates that when there's tensegrity forces, mechanical forces applied across the membrane, it actually affects genetic expression. That's important to know also. Now, please include D.D. Palmer's concept here. The spinal cord is being stretched, and the door is being stretched, meninges, and with this, the nerves are being stretched. And with that, since most cells have 39 separate nerve endings, you have a mechanical stretching of the tissues. As the tissues are being stretched, consistent with D.D. Palmer's concept, the mechanical tension or alteration in tone causes an alteration in the mechanical vibration or pulse pressure wave, or what's called the acoustic wave nowadays. It travels the nervous system. And actually, molecular oscillation is the base of consciousness. The 31 steps of normal complete cycle by Palmer are mostly about vibration, oscillation, perception, and how that is integrated as having meaning in the nervous system. It's vibrational healing, so to speak, where the chiropractic adjustment is the tool to help achieve that. Research with the network wave and Danish researchers also demonstrates that the synapse is now predominantly not a bioelectric phenomenon. Let me say it. It is not a bioelectric phenomenon. What is it then? Well, the major nerve messages, electrical signals travel about 100 meters a second. That's about the same speed as acoustic wave, which is a vibrational wave. The tension in the tissues is converted into electrical signal. So I want to help you understand that this tension pattern is essential, because I'm saying with network that there are 5 phases of spinal cord tension pattern. Each of these 5 phases are 5 characteristic type of tension patterns or chords of adverse cord tension, each affecting the cells of the tissue differently, each produces different consciousness, and every NSA spinal adjustment or NSA spinal entrainment is a means of actually addressing one of those 5 phases in a means of helping apply the contact at what's called the spinal gateway, the access point, so that the spinal integrity subsystems can self-regulate, the body can use energy and information more effectively. Whew, that was a good one. Brigg continues, the clinical implications of these principles are manifest particularly in cervical spinal cord disorders that have arisen as a result of acute or chronic damage to tissues, ranging from sudden trauma to degenerative lesions, and everyone has that. He goes on, the cervical part of the spinal canal normally undergoes greater change in length during postural movements than do other regions, especially thoracic. If you remember from the anatomy, with the lower cervical, C5, actually, at that area, you have the smallest and most narrow part, a neural canal at that particular point, and it's more sensitive at that point. There's actually a cervical enlargement for the brachial plexus, and there's actually a narrowing of the mechanical space there. However, while tension is transmitted in both directions to the brainstem, the chordae equinae, the pathological effects are manifested chiefly in the lower region. Hence, people, low back pain. Hence, you would do better taking care of people looking to help the body to self-regulate is being exerted down below. And what's really so important here is Briggs says that the amount of pressure on the lumbosacral nerves caused by a cervical mechanical tension pattern or stretching is 20 to 30 times the pressure as being created by a lumbar disc herniation or mechanical pressure in the lower area. Let me say that differently. No matter what you do to a nerve in the lower spine, it only causes 1/20th to 1/30th the pressure in that area, mechanically the aggregate tension, as can the similar consequence produced by the cervical spine. Another factor you might find of interest is that Briggs also said that basically when they do autopsies, when a person has explosion of the pons cells, because what he talks about, the adverse mechanical tension, is really the pons cord tissue tract tension. What winds up happening when people have repeated lumbar tractions consistently, a pathognomonic, which means a memory device that's unique for it, is that the person had repeated lumbar tractioning. Because the disc causing pressure on the nerve is not the main mechanical cause of the pain. That's a whole other conversation, what causes pain. But in addition to that, the fact is that force is usually transmitted from another area, and the disc herniation is a way the body can actually reduce the vertical dimension of the spinal cord. That's a combination of what Briggs says and what I found in practice. Let me talk a little bit more about adverse mechanical cord tension. The adverse mechanical spinal cord tension is viewed as a nonlinear. Nonlinear means that a small change in the system in the beginning could result in a big change in the end, and a big thing happening could make a very little difference. In living systems, basically, a system is buffered, and it really works that it is nonlinear. That basically the biggest change in life very often happens at a certain time, a critical time. Someone tells you something. You change the schedule slightly. A slight change in initial conditions of the system create a large productive change because there's an organizing intelligence, and if it has enough energy, when it experiences novelty, neuroplasticity develops, learning occurs, and you can actually have a large outcome with very small input. Even a noxious pattern that's been present for 30 years can be annihilated in a few moments in the system with a single or a simple afferent nerves going to it if it's in the system at the right time in the right cycle of it, which is again the fourth dimension time. The effects produced by the elements of tension pattern are not proportionate linear cause and effect relationship. In the same regard, the utilization of force applications in living systems is multi-directional. It goes in all different directions. It's simultaneous, where different parts receive the information instantaneously, which also means coherent, and it's nonlinear. The NSA clinical system and evaluation and subsequent force application is consistent with these understandings. I had developed a concept years ago, point of critical tension, and that was, where is it appear to be coming from in the spine? I then learned that that's really not a good question. I don't believe anything's coming from a particular place, but certain focuses where the body is most responsive to change. NSA was initially directed to low-force spinal adjustments with the ultimate objective of reduction of spinal tension patterns of the two types of subluxations. Although the objective of NSA has changed, where now we're looking to help produce a self-regulation of the subluxation as one of the outcomes of enhanced spinal neural integrity and energy efficiency and better information exchange, the application still involves a low-force contact. However, it's now postulated the body is involved in an entrainment process, that's a harmonic agreement of self-organization, as the low-force contacts are perceived and responded to on both cortically in a higher level and both subcortical areas of the brain. Thus, in 1999, I took the term adjustment and I replaced it by a more descriptive term, network adjustment or spinal entrainment, because it's not so much about the vertebra adjusting, it's about the entrainment or the alignment of the body's self-regulatory mechanisms, which occur through a frequency entrainment or between a vibing together or temporal aligning, which is what all consciousness is associated with. So now we see the concepts of adverse cord tension, AM, CT, and what's called facilitative focus. So what I'm talking about here is that a facilitative focus is the place where the point of reorganizational tension is directed to. So basically at the vertebral door relationships, you have a point of reorganizational tension. The energy from that area is being dissipated and redirected someplace else. Therefore, since the tension is not at that area, we can get a wonderful change there. What most of us learn to do is apply a force where the body doesn't have the resource to make a change or even receive it effectively. I suspect that at the point of reorganizational tension, the area you want to actually apply the network adjustment to, it probably has a higher threshold of excitability, which means it's mellowed out, it has to really give a bigger signal before response. At the other end of a spine or someplace else, the area of facilitative focus, this is the area where the aggregate tension is referred to. There's a lower threshold of excitability. It's responding to things that might not even happen. Even air currents may bother the person. And this picture is called meningeal Mike. I developed this picture in 1982 to show how the spinal cord's like a fishing line. It's being pulled up and you see the hook at the bottom and you may be feeling a tearing of the hook and the tension bit generated lower down, but we want to actually release the tension like in the fishing reel, and as the spinal cord starts normalizing and ischemia starts reducing with the mechanical tension, sensory motor autonomic functions could start actually normalizing more. So, when the analysis suggests adverse mechanical spinal cord tension is present, or a compromise in the interactions between the spinal stability subsystems, and a particular phase of spinal cord tension occurs, even minimally, a spinal entrainment or network adjustment applied to the spinal gateway is an appropriate action. Now, localized tension can be set up in various sections of the dura due to pathologically increased angulations between two or more vertebrae, vertebral misalignment. The spinal entrainment or network adjustment has a significant impact on the reorganization of the generalized and localized adverse spinal cord tension. So we're talking about addressing the person locally and observing a dynamic global change. There can also be a localized tension in the meningia of the spinal cord can be associated with subluxations. At the spinal gateway, a low force application can result in an effective nonlinear and specific change in meningeal and or spinal cord tension. The region of the spinal gateway is not, I'll repeat, is not associated with localized tension or facilitation of the musculature. Now, since the dura attach to the level of the occiput frame of magnum and the sacrum, as well as the transverse process of the lower cervical C4 to 6. I mean, if you want to know where that came from, Sutherland in 1974, saying that the epineurium is adherent to the gutter of the transverse process of C4, 5, 6, and sometimes 7. The points of critical tension, therefore, are often, but not limited to, the occiput, sacrococcygeal, and lower cervical areas, and also the C1 and C2 areas. The tension in these localized areas is additive and transmissible. If tension is created in the cervical and thoracic areas, the aggregate tension will be transmitted to the lumbar region since the dura is attached to the caudal end. Consequently, additive or aggregate tension from one or more segmental levels, which may already be associated with subluxation, can be sufficient to produce an amplified tension at another segmental level, precipitating another change in defense posture and compromising the spinal stability subsystems and therefore segmental distortion. This latter area of aggregative tension is called facilitative focus. And the way I came about with that idea really was some of the lectures by Erwin Core, osteopath, who in 1955, besides giving some brilliant presentations on the facilitated lesion, he actually implored the Osteopathic Association that they not merge with medicine, they not use symptom assessment to determine what they're doing, because anything can cause anything, and the symptoms usually far away from where the actual lesion, the actual area to be manipulated, as he referred to, has to be addressed. And he said the osteopathic lesion that people go to take care of is usually an area of redirected or of aggregate tension that is redirected into another area. And actually